Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the County Council meeting taking place on Wednesday, the 27th of March 2024. This meeting is being broadcast live through our YouTube channel. Before we commence with today's formal business, can I ask everyone in the chamber to switch off or make silent their mobile phones and all other electronic devices, please. Before we move to the business on the agenda, I would like to remind you of the housekeeping rules for the meeting. As in all of our previous council meetings, any request to speak must be made using your voting handset. Once invited to speak, please stand up and face forward and switch on the closest microphone to you. If you encounter any problems with your voting handset, please raise your handset in the air and a member of committee services will assist. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the members of the public attending the meeting. You are very welcome to attend and observe proceedings. However, I request politely that you do not disrupt the meeting. Members, it is with great sadness that I have to announce the death of former Derwentshire District Councillor Walter Armstrong and serving County Councillor Isabella Roberts. Walter represented the Bernard Field ward on Derwentshire District Council for 26 years, from 1973 to 1979, and again from 1987 to 2007. He was made an honorary alderman in 2009. It is not usual protocol, however, I felt it appropriate to reference the recent passing of Jenny Robson. Jenny was the wife of the late Don Robson, former leader of Durham County Council. Don was a hugely respected figure across County Durham and the North East. He prioritised economic development and growth during his time as leader of Durham County Council and was instrumental in bringing first-class cricket to the county. Isabella Roberts served as a county councillor for the Hordern Division since 2021. Isabella was also a member of Hordern Town Council. I attended Isabella's funeral service last week. The church was packed with family, friends, colleagues and civic dignitaries. Outside the church, the local people gathered in a sea of red and white to pay their final respects. Isabella was a champion for Hordern through and through, and she will be sorely missed. I would like now to invite the group leader to speak, Councillor Carl Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Isabel, I got wrong when I called her Isabella. She was a true champion of the community and represented the people of Hordern with passion, pride and absolute dedication. She loved her role in the community, whether it was cooking community meals, helping hundreds of kids enjoy a game of football, or by championing the regeneration and change for her area. I think we can all agree, Chair, that Isabel was a friend to many, regardless of the politics, and always had time for others, even when she had her own health troubles. She'll be sadly missed by members in County Hall, a community, and by her family and friends, and our thoughts and prayers are with her family and friends at this really sad time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hopgood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In the short time that I've worked with Isabella, it was absolutely clear for everyone to see what a community champion she was, and I can only imagine how our community are going to miss her, as well as her family and friends. And on a lighter note, I have to say she made one of the best cheese scones ever. So thank you, Isabella, and rest in peace.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. It's always sad when we lose a colleague from this council, having shown so much promise and with so much yet to do. Isabella played a key role in supporting Hordern and all of its residents, and she will be greatly missed by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shield.
Thank you, Chair. Having been a serving member of this local authority since 2008-2009, it's unprecedented that we have lost 5 members of this council since its formation in May 2021. Brian Avery, Mark Roberts, B.T. Bainbridge, Leanne Kennedy, and now Isabel. All taken before their time. I understand that she was extremely well thought of as a champion for her area. And on behalf of the Durham Group, our sincere condolences are offered to her family, her friends and her colleagues. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Same, just want to say what more or less what Amanda, Richard and Carl have said. You know, true worker for Hordern will be sadly missed, and our thoughts with the family. And if I could just say, and also protocol, I knew Jenny Robson and JD Robson. You knew where you stood. I classed Don Robson as a friend, and I'm really sorry that you've gone. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Paul Sexton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think everything's been said already. I didn't know Isabel very well. I met her on a few occasions, and she was a fairly determined lady and knew what she wanted and served her community very well. And I'd just like to pass on and extend the condolences to Isabel's family, friends, and of course her colleagues across the way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Karen Hawley.
I didn't know Isabel very well, but the short time we did get to know her, I know how passionate she was about Hordern and the work that she did in Hordern, and it's with great sadness that we found out that she'd passed away, and I would just like to pass our condolences on from all of the underlying group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask that you all join me in standing for a moment's silence for Walter, Jenny and Isabella? We move on to item 1, the minutes of the meeting. Can I have a mover?
Can I move the minutes, please?
And a seconder?
Second the minutes, Chair.
To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of February. Are the minutes agreed? We move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare an interest in relation to any item of business on the agenda? No one? Thank you. We move on to item 3. Members, as always, can I remind everyone that we are respectful to each other during the meeting. Robust debate is part of the democratic process, but I would ask members to respect the views of others and not to point fingers during debate. I would also remind members that it is not appropriate to shout at other councillors across the floor during debate. Please use the microphones when speaking. Where points of order are raised, once a ruling has been made on advice from the Head of Legal and Democratic Services, it will not be revisited. Members, since we last met, I have attended a number of events on behalf of the County Council, including attended a talk by the Mayor of Masafa Yatta, West Bank on the 1st of March, attending the North of England Brass Band competition at the Gala Theatre on the 17th of March, and attending a Welcome to Japan Day on the 25th of March at the Oriental Museum and Tokyo University. As always, there has been a number of successful announcements since our last meeting. Over £6 million is being committed to tackle homelessness in County Durham after we were successful in a bid for funding. We have been awarded funding from the government's single homeless accommodation programme to create new accommodation and increase support for those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. The objective of SHAP is to increase the supply of high-quality accommodation support for adults and young people aged from 18 to 25 years who are either rough sleeping or at risk of rough sleeping. I am delighted to announce that the Council have been re-awarded the Ministry of Defence Gold Award as part of its employer recognition scheme. The award recognises employers which demonstrate positive attitudes and policies towards serving and ex-members of the armed forces. We move on to item 4, the Leader's Report. Can I invite the Leader of the Council to present her report?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Last week, I was proud to sign another landmark devolution deal alongside the leaders of the 6 other North East councils. The Trailblazer deal will give our region more control over transport, housing and skills, and will provide more than £100 million of additional funding that, together with the investment from the original deal, we can invest in priorities identified right here in the North East. I was especially proud that this historic document was signed in County Durham at St Chad's College in Durham University. I can't think of a more fitting setting for such an occasion than in the grounds of an institution that has broadened the minds of so many young people. The historic transfer of power and money from Westminster to the North East will bring immediate benefits to our region, but ultimately it will help us build a better future for our children, grandchildren and their children's children. Securing this deeper devolution deal will empower us to go even further to deliver on our ambitions and to work with our communities on the things that matter most to them. It's also fitting that the Trailblazer deal was signed at the beginning of spring, the season of renewal. Spring also marks the start of our festival and events programme, a key part of our efforts to revitalise our communities and boost the local economy. And I hope you will join me at Bishop Auckland Food Festival on the 20th and 21st of April in what looks set to once again be a great event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do any members have any questions on the report? Can I ask the Council to note the report? Thank you. We move on to item 5, questions from the public. 4 questions have been received for today's meeting. The Constitution provides for 10 minutes for public questions. However, to ensure that we are able to deal with all the questions today, I am proposing that should we need to, we will allow longer. Can I have a seconder to the proposal?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Does the council agree? Thank you. The questions are from Graham Thomas, Diane Inglis, Stephen Ashfield and Matthew Tuff. Can I ask the Head of Legal and Democratic Services to outline the procedure to be followed?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. The Chair will invite the questioners to put their question in the order that they were received before the deadline on Friday last week, and then invite the relevant portfolio holder to respond. Once the questions have been asked and answered, there's no provision for supplementary questions or debate, and the questions and answers will be displayed on the Council's website following the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question comes from Mr. Thomas, who is unable to attend this meeting. Mr. Thomas requested that I put the question to the Council, which is as follows. HS2 devolved 73 million. I would like to ask if North West County Durham, Consett and Stanley in particular, will benefit from this money. We miss out quite significantly. The majority of money is going to Durham City and the south of the county, it appears. The roads around are potholed and poor, and the bus service to and from Durham and Newcastle end way too early. We need more EV chargers too. Mr. Thomas will receive a written response to his question following the meeting. The second question is from Diane Inglis. Can I ask Diane to put your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. Our question today is brought about because we were promised something different to what is happening at the museum site. It was going to be about the DLI and not art galleries and desecration of ashes. We were promised on separate occasions by the Joint Administration during site visits that topsoil would be lifted prior to work beginning. Our recent reply from the Chief Executive of the Council states that no ashes were in the area currently worked on. We dispute this and have submitted a Freedom of Information request asking Council to provide a copy of the report for the evidence of this. Whilst we await this response, can we formally request that work stops on the grounds immediately until a respectful solution can be found for the mess that has been created? Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Can I ask Councillor Scott, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Economy and Partnerships, to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Before I respond to the question, I must make a clarification, as there is a misquote in the question relating to the letter to Mrs. Inglis from the Chief Executive. What it actually said was, before the tree removal works began, our contractors were made aware that ashes may have been scattered across the grassed area in front of the pond and the sloped area leading down to it. The tree felling area has been taped off, and any trees felled are done so away from where ashes may have been scattered. In 2022, the Cabinet of Durham County Council agreed to bring the DLI Museum and Art Gallery back into use as a vibrant community asset and world-class visitor attraction, refurbished and expanded to include dedicated space for the display of key objects from the DLI collection, as well as spaces to house world-class temporary exhibitions to attract residents and visitors. These plans have not changed. We have carried out essential works to remove some existing trees and shrubs in order to prepare the site ahead of construction commencing. Where possible and suitable, we have retained felled trees and chippings on site to reuse within the grounds as potential natural footways and external furniture. The removal of the trees was included in the relevant planning application approved on the 16th of February 2023 and which was subject to public consultation. We know the grounds have strong historical and personal significance to many people. The Council has no record of any permissions granted for the scattering of ashes on the site. However, throughout the project, we've worked closely with key stakeholders, including the official DLI Veteran Association and affiliates, to understand the wishes of the veteran community. We are aware that ashes may have been scattered across the grassed area in front of the pond and the sloped area leading down to it. As a result, we've taken significant steps to treat these areas with sensitivity and respect. We've been clear throughout that our intention is to carefully remove the topsoil from these areas before construction works commence, and to preserve and relay the soil in a new reflective garden area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. The third question comes from Stephen Ashfield. Can I ask you to put your question, please?
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of Shincliffe Parish Council and a concerned residents, I seek clarification on a critical issue affecting our community safety, specifically regarding the Council's implementation of the Department for Transport Circular 01/2006, Guidelines for Setting Local Speed Limits. Can the Council provide an update on whether the assessment for village status under the Department of Transport Circular 01/2006 has been carried out for areas like Shincliffe? And if so, what measures are being taken to ensure the implications of the recommended 30-mile-an-hour speed limits in accordance with this directive? Thank you for addressing this matter of public safety and community.
Thank you for your question. Can I ask Councillor Scott, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Economy and Growth, to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. The assessment for village status under the Department for Transport's circular on January 2013 has been carried out and reviewed on a number of occasions, most recently in 2019 for the area of Shincliffe adjacent to the A177. On each occasion, the reasonable minimum criteria for the definition of what constitutes a village for the purpose of applying a village speed limit of 30 miles per hour has not been met, and since 2019 there has been no fundamental development within the vicinity that would warrant a status change. Therefore, in accordance with the directive, no measures are currently being taken to implement a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. The fourth and final question comes from Matthew Tuff. Can I ask you to put your question, please?
My question relates to the HMOs in East Durham. Does the Council consider that they are keeping in line with their duty under the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 by allowing HMOs, when they are aware that the houses will have visitors who will stay the night, as in every other type of accommodation, making them immediately overcrowded, and therefore allowing widespread criminal offences to occur in every HMO in East Durham, given that the Council themselves have no powers to prevent visitors from visiting? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Rawlinson, Cabinet Portfolio for Resources and Assets, to respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank Mr Tuff for his question today? The Council is responsible for the regulation of housing conditions in houses of multiple occupations. In line with relevant housing legislation, we have adopted standards for all houses in multiple occupation, which stipulates the minimum space requirements for rooms which are intended to be used as sleeping accommodation to prevent overcrowding. The Council will take appropriate action in relation to any HMO which fails to meet these minimum standards or comply with the occupancy requirements. Notwithstanding the above, any HMO or private tenant or house owner has a right to have visitors in their home. As such, the Council is not at liberty to impose restrictions on any visiting guests, and it is not reasonable to expect the Council to know where and when visiting guests are staying overnight. The occupancy number in a HMO is based on those who will live in the property and does not include guests of the resident. The Council has a duty under the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998 to consider the impact of all their functions and decisions on crime and disorder in their local area. In this regard, the Council undertakes its statutory duties and uses its available powers to improve housing conditions and prevent crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour. should there be any concerns about any individual HMO within County Durham, particularly in relation to housing condition, overcrowding or antisocial behaviour, then these should be reported to the Council so that the matter can be investigated and appropriate action taken as necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Responses to all questions asked will be posted on the Council website. That concludes the public questions for today's meeting. Can I thank all the questioners for submitting their questions? We move on to item 6. No petitions have been received for today's meeting. We move on to item 7, report from the Cabinet. Can I ask the Leader of the Council to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Present the report as tabled. Thank you.
No questions have been received in respect of the report. Can I ask the Council to note the report? Thank you. We move on to item 8, appointment to the North East Mayoral Combined Authority. Can I ask the Head of Legal and Democratic Services to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. This is a technical report which seeks to appoint the Leader of the Council as the Council's representative on the North East Mayoral Combined Authority in advance of its first meeting on the 7th of May. The report also seeks to appoint the Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Finance, as well as the Portfolio Holder for Economy and Partnerships as substitute members. These proposals reflect the existing arrangements on the North East Combined Authority, are consistent with the approaches taken by other constituent councils and the expectations of government in agreeing the devolution deal. Chair, the recommendations are set out at paragraph 6.
Thank you. Can I have a mover on the report? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. The proposed appointments seek to ensure that the existing arrangements for the North East Combined Authority are replicated on the North East Mayoral Combined Authority. The proposals, which relate to the particular cabinet positions of Leader, Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for Economy, are consistent with the expectations of government and the constituent councils, and will ensure that the council is suitably represented on the new combined authority and that maximum benefits can be derived for the residents of County Durham. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a seconder on the report? Councillor James Rowlandson.
Chair, can I just second the recommendations?
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the report? Can I ask the Council to agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you. We move on to item 9, the Independent Remuneration Panel appointments to panel. Can I ask the Head of Legal and Democratic Service to present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that under the Local Authorities Members' Allowances England Regulations 2003, the Council is required to establish an independent remuneration panel which must consist of at least 3 members. The Council must have regard to recommendations of the Independent Remuneration Panel before making a scheme of allowances. Members of the IRP don't receive an allowance themselves but may be reimbursed for reasonable expenses incurred in attending meetings. In 2009, the Council agreed to establish a panel of up to 7 members with a 5-year term of office, and a recruitment exercise was conducted. 5 appointments were made, and details of those appointments and the existing membership of the panel are set out at paragraphs 13 and 14 of the report. The terms of office are due to expire on the 30th of September 2024. In June 2023, the Council agreed to maintain its existing scheme of allowances pending a fundamental review of the allowance scheme arising as a result of the Local Government Boundary Commission review. It's envisaged that that review will commence in June and therefore will be ongoing at the point at which the terms of office of the panel expire. To ensure continuity throughout the review period and to avoid any issues that might arise out of any difficulties to recruit, it's proposed to extend the existing panel's membership appointments for a further 12 months to enable a new member allowance scheme to be developed, but that a recruitment exercise will be conducted in 2025 for a new panel. In the event that fewer than 3 members of the existing panel are able to continue, there will be a need to conduct a recruitment exercise with a view to appointing new members. Constitution Working Group considered these proposals at its meeting on the 22nd of February and was supportive of the proposals. Chair, the recommendations are at paragraph 5 to the report.
Thank you. Can I have a mover to the report? Councillor Hopgood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As stated by Helen, this has been through the all-party constitutional working group, so I just move the report as tabled in the papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a second to the report? Councillor Croot.
Happy to second the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the report? Can I ask the Council to agree the recommendations in the report? Thank you. We move on to item 11, motions on notice. We have one motion for consideration today, which is set out on the agenda. The motion is also being displayed on the screen any minute now. Can I ask the Head of Legal and Democratic Services to outline the procedure, please?
Thank you, Chair. The usual rules of debate apply. Movers of motions have 5 minutes to speak. Seconders and other speakers have 3 minutes. Members may only speak once on a motion other than the mover, who has a 3-minute right of reply at the end of the debate. If an amendment is moved and seconded, the debate is on that amendment. Only one amendment may be moved and discussed at any one time. No further amendments can be moved until the amendment under discussion has been dealt with. Each member can speak once on an amendment except for the mover of the original motion, who has a 3-minute right of reply but may not otherwise speak on it. If, following the vote, an amendment is carried, it becomes the substantive motion. 15 minutes before the expiry of the time limit for considering motions, the Chair will advise that there are 15 minutes left. At that point, no further registrations to speak will be accepted. Those already registered will be invited to speak in the order that they registered until expiry of the time limit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Kevin Shaw to move his motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. The most important part of this motion is that the current work being carried out on the site should be stopped and stopped immediately in order to prevent the destruction that has been inflicted upon this very sensitive area. This site should never ever have been developed because there's no way of understanding where ashes may have been laid. There was never any housing being considered on there by us. That was pure lies. There was never any other buildings being considered on there by us. That was pure lies as well. It was always intended to become a permanent, tranquil place to remember and reflect, and it should only ever be used for that purpose. G2.7, City of Durham Parish Council Neighbourhood Plan. The DLI grounds are within the green belt. They have wildlife and recreational value. The significance of these grounds as a resting place for the ashes of members of the DLI make this site of huge importance to local people. So important, the Parish Council has totally ignored this. No judicial review into this. Reductions in capital and revenue spend were paramount when the budget was set only last month by the finance portfolio holder, Councillor Bell, as he cancelled 2 leisure centres. But the money for this was found no problem and topped up. And as its costs may escalate again, that will be no problem. Just dip into capital contingencies. And is this why the headquarters was sold? To pay for this city centre folly? And why is this site being destroyed? To build a conference centre, an exhibition centre, a world-class art gallery, a high-end restaurant, cafe and retail shop. The list goes back and forth and is used to suit any argument and to wishfully hope to meet any challenge from any angle. When it's a couple of 100 yards away from the centre of the city of Durham, which has available places to hold conferences, available places to exhibit, available places to be used as an art gallery, high-end restaurants and cafes, and dozens of retail shops. Oh, and by the way, we have a truly world-class art gallery at Bose Museum. And the DLI collection is already housed in the state-of-the-art building and ready to be shown at Mount Oswald. But no, the trees must be cut down, the site must be ruined, the sanctity forever destroyed, and the green belt developed, without even a murmur from the Green Party. Can you imagine, Chair, the absolute uproar from the members opposite if this was being done by this side of the chamber? To destroy this tranquil setting, to build an art gallery. Well, I'll paint you a picture. In some communities, we have 50% of children living in poverty. They're being fed from food banks and reliant upon daily support from our community centres. Some are now even reliant on teachers to wash their clothes. This money being wasted could have been used to make those lives even a little bit better. And this site could and should be preserved, protected and perfectly presented for generations to come in its entirety. Well, it's a political choice and you'll have to stand up to be counted. So let's start the counting now, Chair. I move for a name vote on this and move this motion.
Thank you, councillors. The motion will require a seconder.
Chair, Councillor Alison Beattie, Pelton Division. I'm seconding the motion. We've heard from Councillor Shaw and now in the sentiment of the question posed from the public earlier, proving how much upset and confusion there is around the former DLI site. This is one big mess. Why were there no consultations carried out to determine the locations of the ashes prior to any work commencing? Although I am aware numerous visits have taken place with the Cabinet members and veterans, at which point some of the locations have been identified. It is impossible without consultation with the wider public to determine how accurate this is. Councillor Scott has just said there is no record of permissions granted. However, it is also worth referencing that we are all aware assurances were given and that the topsoil and grass were to be lifted prior to any work commencing. How do we know we are lifting the soil and the ashes in the right area? I urge Cabinet to stop work immediately, hopefully with the support of everyone in this chamber. Without this information, how can we be sure as to where loved ones' ashes are? And the images are awful to see. I am also at a loss to understand why we are progressing with the proposals for this site in the present economic climate. It is only last month in the budget meeting that we were told there was insufficient funds to rebuild 2 promised leisure centres, yet we are proposing this redevelopment without any accurate costs and quite clearly confusion as to what exactly it will ultimately be. Councillor Scott agreed in this chamber that the DLI collection is going to the Story, which is confirmed in press releases. Yet, Councillor Hood suggests on the 14th of March there will be 2 sites, one being a DLI museum on the former site, and the Story, as the Story is not a museum, which leaves many questions as to the detail entered onto the Heritage Lottery funding applications to in fact secure funding for the Story. Oh, and just to mention, there was also reference to his confusion about as a restaurant was in fact included in the original planning applications. So I really am confused about the 2 sites. Councillor Martin states in his communications on the 31st of October that one of the 3 floors of the building will be dedicated to a rotating display of the DLI collection. But the most important issues of all of this is what has happened in recent weeks. We need to stop, reconsider this project, look to have the site consecrated, ensuring the whole space is used for remembrance and reflection to our fallen heroes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to note that the requirement for the named vote has been noted. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Elizabeth Scott.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I'm very happy to stand up and be counted. There have been some very negative news stories circulating in the local press and on social media in recent months, and these have largely stemmed from a small group of people who were at one time fighting for the museum to open, but now appear not to be, and the Labour group. As we can see from this motion, Labour are now seeking to get rid of the museum entirely, presumably by flattening it and then replacing it with a memorial garden. The negativity that I refer to is largely built on misinformation, so I want to take the opportunity today to correct some misunderstandings, and I'm being generous, Chair, when I say that, for the record. I hope that the remainder of this debate will focus on the facts and not repeating the untruths that are circulating. Firstly, I'm going to read from the planning application approved on the 16th of February 2023. The proposal, refurbishment and extension of existing museum for use as exhibition centre with ancillary restaurant, cafe and retail, alterations to landscaping, access and parking. For clarification, ancillary, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, means providing necessary support to the primary activities or operation of an organisation. So the primary activity is a museum and exhibition space, 233 metres squared of which will belong exclusively to the DLI collection to showcase artefacts and tell powerful stories of the global impact of our regiment. Secondly, I'll mention the support we have for the development. Unequivocally, we have the support of the DLI trustees and association, two significant organisations who have the future of the collection and respect for those who have served in our military at their very core. We also have the mandate of the people of County Durham, and I know that because of the 2021 election results. Thirdly, Wilmot Dixon, the contractor that we're working with on the construction of the new museum, are signatories of the Armed Forces Covenant. They're committed to supporting service leavers and veterans to gain employment in the construction sector. They run an industry-led programme providing advice, mentoring and work placements to ex-service personnel, something I know will be very welcome in County Durham. So in conclusion, Chair, Labour closed the museum. They're now attempting to prevent the reopening of the museum, all without the support of any major stakeholders in the county. If you wish to demonstrate a woeful lack of respect, a lack of vision and failure to listen to the good people of this county, then you'll vote for this motion. Anyone in the chamber with good conscience must vote it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Richard Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Shaw made reference to the cost of the new DLI, and as you might expect, I'm going to give you the financial background to the new building. The cost of the project is 19.9 million, of which 3.5 is being contributed by central government through the region, as the project will benefit the wider Akeley Heads redevelopment. That leaves us spending 16.4 million. When we sold the sands to Durham University last year, we believed the profit was 19 million, around that. Back then, we were planning to build on Plot D. Since then, our accommodation needs have reduced further. Office-based workers need only come in 2 days a week, and we are soon moving into Plot C, Corton House, and when alterations to River Green are complete, County Hall will close. The revised profit from the sale of the sands currently stands at 27.3 million. Taking off the 16.4 million spend on the new building from that 27.3 leaves us with 10.9 million pounds profit. This money has been spent on other capital projects. If we'd had to borrow that 10.9 million, it would cost us around 545,000 a year to service that borrowing. So put simply, the profit we have made from selling the Sands HQ has paid for the new DLI building and its running costs. Let me repeat that. The profit we have made from selling the Sands HQ has paid for the new DLI building and its running costs. Call that spite, as members opposite did in Budget Council. I call that visionary and highly competent leadership of this council for the benefit of its residents. Let us remember that Labour wanted to redevelop the DLI site. Remember those hoardings outside that claimed 6,000 jobs, was it? They were up for years and years. They wanted to develop that site as part of the overall Akeley Heads redevelopment. And Labour didn't because its green belt status made that difficult. Let us remember that they left that building empty and slowly rotting away. Yes, Labour left a memorial to the DLI, all right, a shabby, empty, crumbling building in neglected grounds. Did they consult the public about that? No, they didn't. This motion shows the difference between a Labour group
Councillor.
unable to recognise an opportunity that would have wasted money on the Sands HQ and left the DLI building to rot, and the joint administration who will see the DLI building rebuilt bigger and better at no net cost to the council taxpayer. I am proud to be part of that joint administration, and I urge every member to vote against the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ken Robson.
Thank you, Chair. And through the Chair, can I ask, with respect, if by some miracle our colleagues across the aisle gain control of this council, can we, as a council, take it that the DLI Museum will once again be closed or indeed demolished, despite the wishes of County Durham residents? This being the case, does it not point to the fact that the general public will view this motion as a wanton act of political vandalism? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Julie Scurfield.
Councillor Scurfield, Councillor elected representative for Chesterley Street East. My questions are, does the coalition accept that the DLI collection in its entirety will be housed at the Storey? Does the coalition accept that there are more than enough cafes and restaurants in Durham City already to make another one unnecessary and completely superfluous to requirements? And finally, does the coalition also accept that if an art gallery is indeed needed in Durham City, a much better option would be to make use of one of the many empty units in the city centre rather than using millions of pounds of public money, wherever that has come from, on a development that is simply not needed and that most families will never set foot inside, whilst at the same time disrupting the sacred resting place of many of our heroes. I believe I speak on behalf of residents of Chesterley Street, who I know would much rather that money was spent fulfilling the promise of a new leisure centre, restoring free parking and supporting the revitalisation of our town centre.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor David McKenna. Sorry, Councillor. We have 15 minutes left of the time allocated for motions. There are 7 councillors registered to speak. We will sorry, there are now 10 councillors registered to speak.
May I move a motion without notice to extend time so that we don't go beyond the 2.5 hours of the meeting time till 12:30, please?
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Is it agreed? Thank you. Councillor David McKenna.
Thank you, Chair. Members, just before I get on, I would just like to say to Councillor Scott, she talks about vision, an art gallery, a cafe. I wouldn't say that's really a good example of vision, reinventing something that's already been there and failed. However, we'll leave that at that. In the army, we use a phrase called a warning order. Now, an example of a warden order is tell the troops to prepare to move in 20 minutes in full fighting order. Basically, you're preparing them. You're giving them time to get ready for something that's key. 3 years ago, I attended this chamber for a meeting chaired by Councillor Martin. I raised my concerns about the ashes of former members of the regiment and the importance of having the ground consecrated before any development, including a memorial garden. 3 years later, at last month's meeting, I raised the same concerns. Now, all good soldiers understand reconnaissance is seldom wasted. I've been up to the site, I've had a look, and it's been mentioned. Trees have come down left, right and centre. How are you going to take the top soil away now after what's already been devastated as far as I'm concerned with vehicles going over? I'll never know, which is sad. I don't want to stand here and listen to and fro and this and that, and he says this and she says that. I really don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear about light machinery, workers tiptoeing about in ballerina slippers around the site. It's codswallop. We all know the majority of them ashes are
1 minute,
scattered
Councillor.
around Inkerman Stone. And I can tell you about the Battle of Inkerman. It's so important to the regiment, and that's why most of the ashes are around that area. So anyone knows that's the area of importance. This year marks 80 years of the D-Day landings. 3 battalions of Durhams fought on the beaches from Gold Beach all the way through to the liberation of Europe. So I ask you, when you're thinking about your vote today, think about them men. Is it worth a CAF, an art gallery, or a retail space? Does that justify the sacrifices and their legacy? I say to the veterans in this chamber, and I know there's a few years across the floor, you know the meaning of values and standards. It's about doing the right thing. Protecting the final
Councillor,
resting
it's
place
time.
of our comrades who
Councillor,
serve this country is doing the right thing. Charlie 1, support the motion.
Councillor Anita Savoury.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Anita Savoury for the Weardale ward. The Joint Administration have listened with respect to the residents of County Durham. We have reacted to revive and restore the DLI. We are relocating and we will reopen and preserve this precious and poignant piece of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Angela Surtees.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Angela Surtees from Easington Division. I've sat and listened to something today, and I was in that. I listened to Cabinet back in June 2021, and I also went to the Management Overview and Scrutiny Committee in the July of 21, and I listened to reports that were read out from the Army Museums, Ogleby Trust and the National Army Museum. And in that report, both of those organisations that fundamentally have supported this council to the value of 170,000 for the DLI site down there, which is the current site, roundly reject to the return of that site to a museum. And those words are physically written into that report. They also go on to say that certainty is needed, and also that the perception of unreliability is growing. So for me, and with some of my colleagues over here, I do have a confusion. I thought the History Centre had an 83% positive response about the whole of the DLI collection going up to the History Centre. And if you go onto Durham County Council website and click on the picture of it, the final sentence in the report by Councillor Scott says the entirety of the DLI collection will be housed in the centre.
I also heard in that report that the Regimental and Chattels charity for the former DLI, the trustees, hope that the grounds of Akeley Heads may remain a place to reflect and remember, and also go on to perhaps also commemorate those that lost their lives through COVID as well. And that's written into that report as well. In terms of Councillor Bell saying that there is no cost to the public for the building of this, that is absolutely correct, because they're getting money from government and things like that. But what will be at the cost of the members of the public in County Durham is the £600,000 worth of revenue that's written into the budget that needs to be held for the operations and the running of this.
1 minute, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Councillor Bell, you need to take that statement back, because the building will not cost the public, but in essence, it actually will, because the revenue to support the building will cost the public. The other thing that I just wanted to say about the lack of vision is I've also been in scrutiny meetings where I've heard things about housing development and things like that. If this museum was in Easington Colliery, I wonder if the same fight would be there. Because just recently, I was refused £900,000 in Easington Colliery to develop a council house estate, potentially, to develop the land for a council house estate. Might have nothing to do with this report, but poverty's growing, homelessness is growing, and with all respect, this art gallery, this museum that you are claiming isn't a museum, but is a museum, or maybe it's not a museum, will not benefit my community in any way, shape or form.
Time.
My final question, Chair, if you'll permit it. Can the portfolio holder provide written confirmation that the trustees have agreed to artefacts being taken down to the potential new of it? Well, could I have sight of that, please, and everybody else? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liz Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Liz Brown, Neville's Cross Division. I've been listening to this debate with interest, but there are one or two facts that need to be reiterated. Firstly, this all began with the necessary removal of trees in order to do work on the new DLI building. The felling that needed to be carried out was obvious to anyone who read the planning application. No one has contacted the DCC, either then or since this hit the press, saying that the ashes of their loved ones were scattered among these trees. I would also like to ask if anyone has bothered to read the Site as a Memorial response, which was part of the application documentation submitted on the 25th of January 2023. It states that the area in front of the building is going to have the topsoil respectfully removed and replaced in a site which will be a place for quiet reflection. Not a memorial garden, Councillor Shaw. That is in the Cathedral College. Finally, I would like to ask the party opposite what their plans were when they initially closed the DLI. Not a memorial garden. That seems to be a recent reactive development. I seem to remember housing. Or business units were mentioned, but it could be that my memory is at fault. In fact, going forward, what the joint administration plans would seem to be the most practical use of the site, which will protect the facility for future generations to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Heaviside.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I was surprised when the meeting papers were published with this motion on them. My first thought was that perhaps it's been motivated by listening to a social media group who claim to speak for the DLI veterans. Of course, they are self-proclaimed voice of the DLI. On reading it again, though, it gives no reasons why the development would be cancelled. I was forced to assume it's just harkened back to the previous administration's ill-fated decision to disregard public opinion and close the site. I now know, after listening to the proposal and seconder, that it was a bit of both, really. In recent weeks, I've been talking to interested parties, trustees and the DLI Association. Major Chris Lawton, MBE DL, Chair of the DLI Association, said, "The Association agrees with the DCC project developing the Old Museum building as a museum, arts and exhibition building, including exhibitions from the DLI collection in a garden of reflection in the area of the DLI VC stone was situated." Colonel H.E. Shields, MBE DL, Chair of the Trustees, said, "The story needs Akeley Heads and Akeley Heads needs the story. The two go hand in hand. If there's no exhibition space at Akeley Heads and not very much to see at the story, then a golden opportunity to attract people to Durham will have been lost. General Sir Nigel Poet said some 60 years ago, "It's the people of Durham who have made the story of the Durhamite infantry." The fervent wish of the trustees is that the regimental collection is preserved for future generation, and is just as importantly, the people of County Durham are able to see and recognise their proud and significant military story. Any veterans in this room thinking about supporting this motion, I would thank them to take a long, hard look at themselves before doing so. I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tinsley.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the last meeting I asked for clarification about what's being built down there, and I thank Councillor Scott for her notice today, but this is the actual planning permission for what's being built. And what is clear that we are getting an exhibition centre and a gallery venue. So when we look at this, the devil is in the detail about what's being provided down there. And I think Councillor Scott said that we're getting 336 square metres of dedicated space for the DLI. I will be corrected on that. The exhibition space and gallery area is 782 square metres. So we're getting 15% of the 2,200 square metre building for the DLI, 15%. But this motion isn't about just about what actually the use is down there. This is about the ashes that have been potentially desecrated down there by what's occurring on the site. Now, there's two things I wanted to bring up about this. The first thing is that there was this notion that we weren't aware of this being an issue. Now, before the planning application was submitted, there was a document called the Statement of Community Involvement prepared. At paragraph 5.1 of that, it specifically refers to the ashes down there. So before this planning application was submitted, this issue was on the public record as being a point that needed to be addressed. Then we move forward to the planning application being issued. Condition 8 of that planning permission requires the preparation of a construction management plan down there. Now, that document isn't on the planning file when I've just looked on there. But again, was this issue of ashes and how to deal with the ashes in the construction of that site addressed? I don't know. I will look at that when it becomes available. But the key point here is that what is occurring down there, we need to stop. We need to take stock. We need to make sure what's being done is being done correctly, and all measures are being taken on board to ensure that this site is being addressed properly. That's what this motion asks for in the first instance. We need to do this as an authority, because when I look at this, it's not clear that it has been. Thank you,
1
Chair.
minute, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Louise Fenwick.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Louise Fenwick, Peatley, West Division. Can I just ask a simple question? What is the name of the posh eatery, stroke art gallery, stroke conference centre? Councillors Scott and Bell keep referring to it as the reopening of the old DLI museum, which is quite clearly not. The opening of the DLI with all exhibits and DLI records is going to be within the story at Mount Oswald, which is just about to open. The story is going to be the new home of the DLI, so to avoid confusion, what is the name of the multi-million-pound art gallery on the site of the old DLI? Because calling it the new DLI is supremely misleading. And regarding the ashes are currently in the grounds of the old DLI, so therefore it is already a memorial garden. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Can I just clarify that questions need to become in a different part of the agenda?
Thank you, Councillor.
Although if members of the administration are able to answer the questions and wish to when making their speech, they can address it that way.
Councillor Bill Kellett.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bill Kellett, Sherburne Division. As one of the older generation, I've still got memories of relatives who served in the Second World War, particularly my mother's brother, Uncle Joe. Originally, he was in the collieries, he was a miner, but because he was a terrier, and for those who don't know, terrier, Territorial Army, called up and he served with Montgomery in the desert and in Italy. Looking at this, I know the site where the ashes are scattered, and as being pointed out, many of the ashes are scattered around the Inkerman site. But the best of it is, every family, and I know one or two have ashes without permission, yes, scattered up there, but they can go there and say, our father, grandfather, uncles, ashes are there. That's personal, Chair. Personal. The moment you put a bulldozer in and say, we're going to remove these and shift them a mile away, that's impersonal. Those ashes are mixed up with other people. You can't go up and say, that's where the ashes are. Impossible. And that's why I totally support this motion that work stops immediately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robert Potts.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robert Potts, Evenwood Division. As most people know, I'm the Armed Forces and Veterans Champion for the County Council, but I'm also a veteran myself. I've attended numerous meetings recently, Evenwood, Staindrop, Bishop Auckland. I've been to the Armed Forces Forum in Durham, and I've spoken to numerous veterans, whether they be you know, DLI members, DLI association members, or veterans who are, you know, who go to these meetings. None of which at all are pro what you're asking for today. They all want the DLI Museum, and all the ones I've spoken to. I can't tell you most of the comments that they were saying, because a few of them have been derogatory, but I can read a letter I've received off a member of the public, which basically says, a lot has been written in the Northern Echo, Newcastle Chronicle, and social media recently in regards to the desecration of the ashes scattered at the site of the Durham Light Museum. So today, being County Durham Day, to pay my respects to our beloved heroes, he's visited the site. Whilst I fully understand people's concerns around the ashes, put in an FOI, which has showed that the site has never been designated as an area for scattering the ashes. The machinery being used on the site is lightest equipment that can physically undertake all the work. An area of the site has been cordoned off where ashes were scattered and remains untouched. Another area where ashes were scattered were around the Inkerman stone, which was moved using heavy equipment in only 2018. And around the pond where the ashes have also been scattered, this was regularly cleared over the years with heavy equipment. My late grandfather's regiment deserves a fitting museum honouring our heroes of the DLI, lest we forget. Kind regards. I'd like to just say what one of my colleagues opposite said, to the veterans on this side of the aisle, do the right thing. Well, the right thing would have been not to have run down the DLI Museum and not to close the DLI Museum.
1 minute, Councillor.
This redevelopment is about rectifying that disrespect to the veterans, both past and present. And for that reason, I will not be supporting your motion.
Councillors, can I just remind us, this is a very emotive subject. Can we respectfully remain silent when other people are standing to speak? Councillor Pete Malloy.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pete Malloy, Spennymoor Division. I was recently asked a few weeks ago by a representative of the Faithful Durhams to visit the DLI Museum site, which you did, and I was asked my thoughts on it. I'd just like to read out my response to that representative. I went there on Saturday afternoon councillors were sent some information on Thursday regarding the situation surrounding the DLI Museum and Art Gallery. If I'm honest, it is not the ideal situation concerning the rebuild, and I don't think there would ever be an ideal situation that would please everyone. With regards to the ashes and looking at it objectively, I can see both sides of the argument of no permission sought to place ashes there, and the reasons why families placed their loved ones' ashes there, especially now they have to be removed. I have placed my father's ashes at the base of Prince Rupert's Tower, which is the building on Everton Football Club's badge, without permission from Liverpool City Council, so I know what it means to place ashes in a place of meaning, and I know there is a risk to what I have done. I don't think any one organisation, DCC administration or individual is at fault, and I honestly believe that if Labour would have got back in at the last election, they could get back in next year, that there would be no form of DLI museum rebuilt on the site, and the land would possibly have been sold off for some form of the wider development of the area, which would affect the ashes of those that have been placed there. Chair, like some of my fellow members here, I am too a veteran, 7 years in the army, and I believe I'm a veteran first, politician second, and I always put the interest of the military community first. And I hope...
1 minute, Councillor.
Thank you. I hope my fellow veterans on both sides of the chamber think they're veterans before politicians first and do the right thing by the people of this county. And that right thing is to vote against this motion. Thank you.
Chair, can I please raise a point of order? Thanks, Chair. I just want some clarification because there was a press release issued by this council, Durham County Council letterhead, on the 16th of February. It's pertinent to this debate because I'm worried that people are being conned. The story will also be the permanent home for the whole DLI collection, reuniting it with the DLI archive for the first time since 1998. Chair, can we have some clarification from the Chief Exec whether that was a factual comment in a council-issued press release,
Councillor,
please?
I've taken advice and it's not a point of order.
Point of order is a breach of the council procedure rules or a breach of legislation, not a clarification as to what's been said in the meeting.
Can I question that, because I think this directly relates to a policy position that was published by this council, and I'm just asking the senior officers within the council to confirm whether that's factually correct.
Are you seeking clarification as to the definition of a point of order or an answer to your question?
Sorry.
Councillors, sorry, councillors, we will not be disrespectful to each other in this chamber.
Sorry, Chair, I'm probably challenging the head of legal's interpretation of a point of order is what I'm saying, Helen, because I'm asking, for me, this is council policy, and I'm asking clarification on this council policy because I feel it's pertinent to the debate.
So Council Procedure Rule 12.3 deals with a point of order. It says a member may raise a point of order at any time. The Chair will hear them immediately. A point of order may only relate to an alleged breach of these council procedure rules or the law. The member must indicate the rule and law in which the way in which they consider it's been broken. The ruling of the Chair on the matter will be final.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll move on to the next speaker. Councillor Paul Sexton.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me about my voice. I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. This is really difficult, and I'm astonished we're in this situation, if I'm honest. It was so avoidable. I think the comms have been poor, if I'm honest. I've visited the site after 2 residents of mine called me up and said, have you seen what's going on? And it's fairly obvious to me, in 2021, we all went down when we met the DLI Association, the Faithful Durhams, and several other people. And many of us knew pretty much where the ashes were. And I've said on some of my recent comms, it wouldn't be hard to plot, working with those groups, broadly where the ashes are, demonstrating we mean business in protecting. There is no turf being lifted. And one councillor says there was a cordon, the other councillor says light machinery, where the Inkerman stone was. Well, that's within the cordon, and we've got photographic evidence to prove that. The reality is, there appears to be no due care taken. And I just wish, and the councillor over here basically is the first person to acknowledge that maybe it's not an ideal situation. Put your hands up and just say, look, we're messed up, comms issue, it's indefensible, it really is. This motion, obviously, perhaps wouldn't have even been brought had that happened. And this is what's so sad about today, because I think we all respect our veterans, and we all should. Many of us may not be here if it wasn't for those. So it's very difficult for me, being somebody who was in cabinet and pushed forward for the DLI to be opened. The fact that it's morphed into something different is you know, just time, I guess. But I'd just like to pick up on
1 minute, councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on some of the comms going out as well, because it's both ways. You know, the talk of this restaurant and things like that. Well, you know, there was a Michelin star restaurant link, Chair, as you well know, and I well know, mooted at the time, yeah? And whether it was discussed and dismissed, it was something that was discussed. So to say it's political gambit is not true. I just wish people would get together for once, stop playing politics, address what happened, hands up and apologise, and put things in place, perhaps in a plan even, to demonstrate that we will look after these areas, some of them in damage beyond repair, and we'll move forward with a plan and bring everybody together. That's all that really needs to happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Joe Quinn.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard a lot today about the DLI Museum, and rightly so. The residents of County Durham never wanted this to be closed. However, today, Chair, I'm going to talk about the impact on a local business who has received intimidation and abuse from people who have been whipped up by the negative press and social media, such as this motion and comments in the press by the Labour group. He's even had a journalist climb over Harris fencing to take photographs. This chair is a local tree surgeon who is carrying out works on the site. It's worth noting, Chair, that there's been no tree management service on the site for many, many years. Many of these trees were removed as they were unsafe and overcrowded. As far as the timber and the chippings will be reused on site to make seating, benches and for ground cover. Nothing has left the site that wasn't strictly necessary. The local tree surgeon is simply carrying out works exactly as agreed through planning permission obtained last February. He was made aware of the sensitivities around the site and cordoned off the area accordingly. He has also used minimal equipment to cause minimal disruption of the ground. Obviously, with the wet conditions, some tyre tracks were inevitable. Despite all of the precautions taken, this man was left in fear of reputational damage, had his vehicles photographed and was repeatedly harassed to the point that he felt he couldn't continue with his job. Picture that, feeling like you cannot continue with your job. This chair is a disgraceful abuse of power and those responsible should be ashamed. I hope this message gets to those who have been abusing and intimidating this business and that they stop immediately. Chair, I support local business. I hope members of this chamber condemn the actions taken by the individuals in question and regardless of what side you sit on, come out in support of this local business too. And Chair, I just want to leave the residents of County Durham with a small statement regarding the DLI Museum. If you really don't want the DLI to reopen, simply vote Labour.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor David Sutton-Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Sutton-Lloyd.
Chair, can I raise a point of clarification, please? As far as I'm aware, trespass and intimidation are a crime, so I'd like to know who Councillor Quinn is accusing of being responsible for. Is it the Labour group or is it somebody else? Or he has to withdraw that comment, Chair.
It's not appropriate for the debate.
Councillor, would you please take that up with the member outside this? It's not appropriate for this discussion, but I'm sure the councillor will be happy to speak to you outside the chamber. Councillor David Sutton-Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. David Sutton-Lloyd, Councillor Newton Aycliffe and Midridge. Contrary to Labour tradition, I was intending to speak today, but what I was intending to say has changed by a casual event that happened to me yesterday. A change of train times meant I had 20 minutes to fill in at Durham railway station. So, being me, I went for a cup of tea in the waiting room, and one wall is covered by a mural. That mural was painted by the Cheesy Waffles Group, a charity based in Durham that enriches activities for young people. Their mural depicts what this group sees as Durham, and quite rightly, it has drawings of pits, miners, black faces and the lamps on, pit ponies pulling coal wagons, railway engines obviously, the viaduct, the cathedral, the sanctuary knocker, Cuthbert's Cross, the monks, and, because of the diversity of this county, green fields, stone walls and sheep, which might please some of my colleagues. Cricketers, the Gala Theatres on there and Luminaire. But significantly, a large proportion is the DLI badge and 7 service personnel marching. We are free to enjoy all the benefits of living in this wonderful county. This group of children recognise the sacrifice that those people made, and they showed them quite deliberately in this mural. This should shame the people who are thinking of supporting this particular motion. I am not ashamed that I want everybody who visits the new DLI Museum Exhibition Centre that they will experience a quality visit that will enhance the memory of those people, many of whom gave their lives for that freedom. I think that there is no need for this, but quite frankly...
One minute, Councillor.
Children recognise the history of what makes up Durham, and the DLI is a huge part of that. It's important going forward that that picture and that involvement is not lost in the great heritage of this county, in the way that we sell the county to improve it with visitors and so on. I certainly will not be voting for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tinsley. Councillor. Councillor Tinsley. Councillor Tinsley. Let me make it clear. I don't need anybody else to tell me what to do in this chamber other than Helen. Sorry. That we are in a debate, we are not in a question. And I understand where you're coming from, but this is a debate about the subject that we are discussing.
If members have points of clarification or want to make points that there's a lack of clarity about particular issues, they can do so by way of a speech if they haven't already spoken. And it may well be that members of the administration, if they are able to and choose to use their speaking time in such a way, they will respond to those. Otherwise, there will be issues that need to be picked up outside the meeting.
Thank you, councillors. We'll move forward. Councillor Mark Wilkes.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Shaw, you talk about folly. The only folly is from Labour shutting the museum and even filibustering to block a debate on the closure back in 2015-16 with one Labour member talking about sprout picking in Lincolnshire to waste time. As I recall, Labour insulted teaching assistants that day as well by timing out discussion on that travesty too. You'll note today that we've extended the time available for this debate, something you regularly refused to do for years when you were in control. The only real reason you want to stop this project is because you don't want the building that your Labour Party left to rot to be rebuilt and reopened by the joint administration. Your motion doesn't even mention ashes. What it says is cancel the plan and put in a memorial garden. You've got no proposal for the building itself. What would you do with the building? Leave it to carry on rotting, pull it down? How can anyone support this motion? The reality is, you don't want us to do anything successful for this county, you just want to snipe. You even voted against the £1 billion devolution deal. God help our county and the memory of our veterans if Labour ever get control of this council again. We can't have another 100 years of failure and respect for the public or the DLI. Labour can't be trusted with the history of our county. This motion proves it and can't be supported.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jonathan Elmer.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak on this
Jonathan,
debate.
sorry, 2 seconds. Thank
Thank you, Chair. Jonathan Elmer, the councillor for the Brandon Division. I didn't intend to speak on this debate because so much of what I was going to say has already been said, but the point was made in the actual wording of the motion itself that my party had been neglected our work, essentially. And I'd just like to say that as a party, we actually monitor all major, we have limited capacity to do this, but we monitor all major planning applications, especially when there's a concern in relation to impact over environmental issues. And we did so with this one as well. We looked at this application and considered very carefully whether or not it would constitute an impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. So therefore, whether it was in compliance with our council's Greenbelt policies. And I looked at it very carefully as well, and it doesn't. There's no material difference in the area taken up as a consequence of this development. And the council's own internal consultees also agreed, that, and landscape architects also agreed, that there's no impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. So I think it's unreasonable to infer that somehow the planning process hasn't been correctly followed with that material planning consideration, and also that I've somehow been negligent in overseeing these sorts of applications. I know that people who have seen me working on the various planning committees will appreciate that the position I take is completely apolitical and is just about securing the best way forward in relation to these developments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tony Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. I want to address the part of the motion for the cancel and replacement and replacement with a memorial garden. So just to put a bit of context, a few years ago I went to Killip lead mine with my children, and we went around there and we learned a story about a miner who was down the mines after being away for several months, who had to pay for his own accommodation to work away. But the one that really stuck in my mind was the fact that they had to buy their own candles out of their wages to be able to do their jobs, right? And that stuck in my mind. And the reason it stuck in my mind is because the museum is there as a living embodiment of our history and culture, right? For us to go and see, for us to take our children there, and to us to remember, and to not forget our past. It's the same for Beamish Museum. So you go around Beamish Museum, I've travelled the trams, I've been in the sweet shops, I've had a pint in the pub, I've been down the mine and I've been in the school. I've taken my children there. They understand, based on Beamish, what it was like to live in the Edwardian era, to live in the 50s, to go down a mine. They remember because they've been there. I feel exactly the same about the DLI Museum. Now, I'm not from the city of Durham, I'm from Haswell. I was born and brought up there. But I remembered the DLI Museum from when I was a child. We would go there on school trips, 300 years of military history, encompassing. I learned about the First and Second World Wars from there, from that museum. It was an important thing that was shut down in 2016, which should never have been shut down. It should have been invested in and maintained. Can you imagine shutting down Beamish? Can you imagine shutting down Killip Lead Mine? It makes no sense. So I feel really strongly about this as maintaining, to invest in the future of the building, to maintain the memory. When you talk about having a cafe and it's such a ridiculous argument. You name a museum to me that doesn't have one. It's part of the business plan.
1 minute, councillor.
That's all I've got to say. I will not be voting for this motion. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor McKeon.
Thank you, Chair. Before I had the honour of being elected to this council, my first job was at Durham University in their heritage sector, working at Palace Green Library, and I'm also a trained paleographer, and I've worked with manuscripts and historical documents dating from the 9th century onwards. So I do know a little bit about documents and bringing people around these documents. And the first thing that you have to know about this sector is that whatever you do, whatever you build, has to be sustainable. A big problem with the current DLI site, I say as someone who grew up in Durham City, or the previous DLI site, is that it's very difficult for a lot of families to get to. There isn't actually a public transport link there. It's a bit off the beaten track. You have to go up a big hill. I couldn't get my grandma up that hill in a wheelchair. So it's not a sustainable site for a museum, which is why that decision had to be made, I believe. I wasn't a councillor at the time, but that's the rationale that the Labour group had. The Story is a completely different example of a heritage building. It's purpose-built so that you don't get the kind of mouldy manuscripts that I've had to work with in the past, or ones that have been cut and shredded that you have to push together. And also it's right next to the Oriental Museum, the Botanical Gardens and Howlands Park and Ride. So you've got parking, you've got a route directly into Durham City. People can go in to see the collection on their way home, on their way into town. And I have a question that I'd like to ask as a result of this, and that's, where should families go on their day out to Durham if they want to see this collection? Should they go to the site that's being discussed today, or should they go to the Story when they've been told in DCC press releases that that's where they should go? And one last point, Councillor Bell very graciously gave us some advice a couple of years ago on how to write motions and the importance of brevity in motions. I just wondered if Councillor Wilkes was a little bit annoyed that we'd taken his colleague's advice. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Amanda Hopgood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I am going to address some of the points that people have been raising under points of order at the same time, but I was in the queue to do it in the right way. So in terms of some of the things that I've heard this morning, just for clarity, you don't have to go very far from this building to see all the brown signs that direct you to the DLI Museum and Art Gallery. It's always been an art gallery as well as a DLI museum, for the record. The Inkerman Stone was moved in 2018, so we haven't disturbed anything around the Inkerman Stone because it's not there. Clearly the opposition, and this is the bit I'm going to address, absolutely do not understand the difference between storage and housing of a display and an exhibition. Yes, it's going to be the whole collection. So for clarity, so you're absolutely 100% clear, the whole of the DLI collection, and you can minute this and you can record it, will be held at the Story. That is going to be held at the Story because it will be held in the correct conditions to preserve it for life and for the future. But there will be a collection on display and regularly changed so that it attracts people to the DLI Museum. And that's why the DLI Museum failed in the past. That's why you closed it, because you didn't invest in it. You ran a museum into the ground. If you'd gone to visit it 30 years ago and then you went back 30 years later, you'd have seen exactly the same display because you changed nothing. And that's what this administration is. It's forward thinking and it's protecting it for the future. So what we plan to do is invest in our history, make sure it's there for generations to come. And someone's mentioned Killip. You'll have seen a press release this week to say Killip will actually be closed this year and we'll be taking Killip to the community. And that's because we've successfully secured almost £500,000 of funding to work on that building and work on the asset to make sure that it's secured so that generations to come can appreciate the history of this great county. And this motion doesn't request that we don't do work on the land, doesn't request for us to just stop, it requests for it to be cancelled. And anyone in here who votes to cancel and not replace and not reopen that building should be utterly ashamed of themselves and never say that they represent the people of County Durham or that they're forward thinking when it comes to making sure our history is protected.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mike McGowan.
Thank you, Chair. Mike McGowan, Lanchester Division. Like many of you in the room, I am also a veteran myself, and I understand the sentiments of all the veterans that have spoken this morning. The bottom line is, the DLI Museum shouldn't have closed when it did. There is no getting away from that fact. Okay, it was disrespectful and went against everything that the people of Durham wanted. Now, there are many reasons how we can justify, or why you could justify closing it, financial, other pressures. We all understand that. However, the bottom line is, you close something against the wishes, against the specific wishes of the residents of County Durham. Testament to that fact is that many people that were voted in 2017 are sat on this side of the chamber. More because people who voted to close the DLI lost their seats on that basis. Fast forward another 4 years, yet again, most of the people that came in 2021 were voted in because people on this side of the chamber failed to acknowledge the wishes of the residents in County Durham. Councillor Peterloy made a great point earlier on when he said actually he scattered his father's ashes in an area which is personal to him, but he knows, like anything else, if they move it, that's on him. Okay? I acknowledge that people who have went up and scattered ashes in the area, in and around the museum, it's upsetting to see what's happened. Okay? However, if it's, you know, if people go up, that's on you as individuals to do that. Okay? I'm not taking away the respect, thank you. However, we cannot, you know, just because you scatter ash does not make it sacred ground. So, can it reopen? We needed it to reopen because most of the people that were voted in got voted in on the precise manner that they campaigned to reopen it. It couldn't reopen in its old form because it wasn't making business. It had to be a new business model. Investment was needed. We've heard how the investment was needed because we've sold off your folly of a new headquarters. Could comms have been better? Probably. Probably. And I put my hand on that. On the GA side, comms could have been better. But we are where we are. And just for all veterans, I think you only need to take a check pace on what you're doing this morning. Okay? Think about this, and I will not be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor James Rowlandson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make it clear, Labour closed the DLI Museum, failed to maintain the building, and it is now fallen into wreck and ruin. There is no mention of the building in Councillor Shaw's motion. Are Labour happy for it to continue to fall into the ground? The DLI building is a beacon for the people of County Durham, for the families of those who have fallen, serving and retired soldiers. All of us on this side are fully aware of the importance of this site, unlike Labour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Charlie Kay.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I wasn't going to speak today. And I don't speak from a script, so if I go around the houses a little bit, you understand why. And Angie just told me I have to use my inside voice again, so we'll see how that goes. Can we have clarification? This only needs to be one sentence. Was it, well, actually one word, was it the DLI trustees who made the decision to close the museum? Who was it? Come on, who was it? Why are you speaking to me, Ellen? Who was it?
Sorry, Councillor Kay, I'm not a councillor, I'm not part of the debate.
What?
So I'm not part of the debate, Councillor.
No, I just wanted to answer your question, yes or no. Who was it? Was it this side or was it the trustees? It wasn't the Labour Party. And I had to laugh when there's a councillor over there, I'm pointing at him, talking about in this chamber we fought to keep the DLI Museum open in 2016. Nice one. He didn't become councillor until 2017, so how he did that, I don't know. There's another word for that. And as for your new offer, 15% of the floor place and 2 toilets. Nice one with that. There's a lot of thought going into that, hasn't there? You'll be judged next year. The council like Mark Wilson's gone through it. He referred early days of the coalition that we will be out for 100 years, and other ones concur with that. Well, 100 years will be up next May a week. A year come May, but we are back over there, and you know it's going to happen.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olwen Gunn.
Thank you, Chair. Can I first of all start by saying that I really don't need a lecture from Councillor Hopgood on the difference between an exhibition and a collection. I do know the difference between that, but I also know that it was always the intention of the previous Labour administration to not just have the collection at the Storey, but to have an exhibition at the Storey as well. That was always the intention. And Chair, there seems to me, and respectfully, but there seems to me to be many sweeping generalisations going around this chamber about many things. And we've had generalisations about voting, how people voted, why people voted in the last election. Generalisations without any specifics about that. We've had comments made about going against the specific wishes of the residents of County Durham, what all of them. Really sweeping generalisations from the other side of the chamber. And I think that this is not what this debate needs. This debate really needs to focus very carefully upon what is happening now. What is happening now at the former DLI Museum is that there is desecration of the ground, regardless of whether there were permissions for ashes. Everyone knew there were ashes there. If the other side of the chamber, the leader and her cabinet, didn't know there were ashes there, then I must say that I'm really quite shocked and surprised by that. So I really would like the independent Tory and Lib Dem cabinet to to consider this motion very carefully and to consider their consciences regarding their own motives about why they are actually going ahead with this high-end cafe and this art gallery, which is totally unwanted and unnecessary. Examine your consciences and vote for this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, as it's been well documented and has been stated this morning, it's a very emotive subject that we're discussing. We've had lots of statements made from both sides of the chamber, and I would ask, Chair, whether we could consider taking the vote on this before any further emotive statements are made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody speaking here should be going through the chair. That councillor didn't. He spoke directly across the chamber at us, and that is ultra vires.
Thank you,
Chair, that's not the point. I looked at the chair. I focused on the chair. I did not look at any member opposite.
Councillors, we are nearing the end of this debate. We have no one else registered to speak. We have a new speaker registered.
May I make a point of order? Because if it's Councillor Marshall, he's already used his right to speak when he asked the question before.
He raised a point of order.
Chair, it wasn't a point of order. As you went on and he carried on speaking, does that not constitute the fact that he spoke?
I think he's entitled to speak and make a speech.
Councillors? Councillors, I've taken advice. Our legal team tell me, Councillor, it was a point of order and not a speech, so Councillor Marshall has the right to speak now.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know why the leadership in here are worried. Okay, I think I just want to bring us back to a sense of reality.
Councillor Marshall, sorry. That's just downright rude. And I won't have that in this chamber from anyone. And I don't need anyone to clap either. What I need is Councillor Marshall to stand up and say what he's come to say. And I think to do anything disrespectful before that is just not on. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I think there's so much unclarity around this. When you look at the official documents put out by the Council, they're all crystal clear that the DLI collections and archives are going into the Story building, as the previous Labour group had planned. The cabinet member stood up here a year or so ago. It's on the live stream of the meeting to confirm exactly that. The floor plans that are in the public domain for the new proposed area have very limited space for the collections to be displayed, even if they're on a rotating basis. You're only going to get a fraction of them there, and they're just up the road at Mount Oswald. And I tell you what, Chair, I just want to be clear about what Labour wasn't going to do with that. Labour wasn't going to concrete over the ground where people had laid the loved ones to rest. The Labour group never proposed that. The Labour group were never going to play fast and loose with the taxpayers' money in an uncosted. Nobody can get sight of a business plan for it. The 600 grand a year revenue in the budget and a 20 million price tag as we sit today. There's no clarity on this at all, and depending on who you speak to, you get a different answer. Chair, I just want to be clear here, and we will all be judged in a couple of years at the next election. The problem is the people in County Durham haven't got a choice, unfortunately. They can choose between Labour or a Conservative, because effectively that's the only choice you have in here, because any other political party or anybody else you vote for follows the Tory mantra in here. I think, Chair, the lack of a plan for this, and that's come out in the debate this morning, my worry is, and I'll be quite serious with my language I'm using here, because this is what I believe, based on the information I've heard, that people have been lied to, they've been deliberately misled as to what this will be, and that will start to come out in June when the Story opens and the public go in to see what's in there. that
1
this
minute,
will
Councillor.
be a posh restaurant, a cafe, a fancy art gallery with a tiny little cubbyhole to display some stuff from the collection so the coalition can say they've met an election pledge. It's totally disrespectful to associate the DLI's names with this or to suggest it's going to be anything other than a fine dining eatery and a fancy art gallery, Chair.
Councillors, this is a rare occasion. I want to clarify something in this chamber. There was no Michelin star restaurant. There was a Michelin star restaurant brought for a discussion, and the reason I know that is because I brought this discussion. This was never agreed with the Cabinet or anything else. So that is the point of clarity on the Michelin star restaurant. It never came forward, it was never discussed, to my knowledge. I still have no one else registered to speak. Do I? Nope. Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Shaw to close the debate with his right of reply?
Thank you, Chair. Well, we've been around the houses there. It's interesting that the vandalism on this site has played second fiddle through most of the debate by issues raised on the other side. To costs and Pinocchio politics, it's always the same. You know, the cost of everything and the value of nothing. The DLI building has been replaced at the cost of £20 million. It's called a story. But don't let a good story get in the way of a good lie. As regards to listening to the respondents, that's a novelty. 98% of respondents in the most recent consultation were ignored. Councillor Liz Brown, you remember housing being discussed and you remember buildings being discussed. Yes, it came from your side. It never came from us at any point, at any time. The DLI was never run down. Visitor numbers declined. The trustees approached the council because the building was not fit for purpose and the solution was required. The solution was the story. And it was chosen because the site itself could not, should not be disturbed. It's abhorrent, it's repugnant, and it's unforgivable. The collection being split, that was a huge point of criticism when it was necessary, following the trustees' decision. Now it's seen as the best thing. Councillor Wilkes, Labour can't be trusted with the history of our county. We've actually made the history of this county for the last 100 years, and you've spent the last 3 years trying to rewrite it. That's the difference between successful politicians and yourselves. Can we go to the vote, Chair?
I'll ask Helen to...
Thank you, Chair. So the usual arrangements for the vote will apply. We did have a valid request for a recorded vote. So the way in which you vote will be recorded in the minutes. Please wait for the buzzer to sound, which will indicate voting is open. It's 1 if you are voting in favour of the motion, 2 against, and 3 to abstain. If you press the wrong button, pressing the right button corrects your vote. And if you have a problem with your handset, please raise your hand and a member of the team will come and help you. Thank you. That's the vote open.
Councillors, I'm going to close the vote. Councillors, for the motion 53, against the motion 60, abstain 1, the motion falls.
Chair, is there any chance that that could be made a little larger just for those that's vocally challenged?
We'll see what we can do there.
If not, we'll share the outcome with group leaders as soon as we're able to after the meeting.
Councillors, we are going to share this with the group leaders, so we shall move on to item 12. Questions from members. We have received one question from today's meeting from Councillor Paul Sexton. The question will appear on the screen. Can I invite Councillor Sexton to ask his question, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll wait till it comes up on the screen because I'm not sure it's, well, it should be the same as the email, I guess. I'll wait for members to see it. Thank you, Chair. Well, as you can see on the screens above, at the January 2024 full council, the motion was to reconsider the withdrawal of free after two parking was unanimously passed. Could the Cabinet and Portfolio Holder please provide full council with an update on any decision? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I invite Councillor Elizabeth Scott, Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Economy and Growth, to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair. At full council on Wednesday the 14th of January 2024, Cabinet accepted a motion which was approved after a vote to reconsider the decision to end free parking after 2 p.m, and that process is currently ongoing and will be reconsidered by Cabinet as previously committed. Thank you.
Councillor Sexton, you do have a supplementary question if you want one.
Really just about an expected date. Is it going to be weeks, months? Just residents are asking, that's all. If the portfolio's got any idea, if not, I'll take it offline.
Yes, I can answer that because it's a financial decision. It has to go through the proper process, so it'll be when we can get it through scrutiny. So it will be a matter of months, not weeks, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, That concludes today's business for the council meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part and to those members of the public and media who have been watching this meeting.